All right. Looks like we're live. I'm here with Zack Scholl. He's one of the tinkers from the Tinker program for Gno.land. What's up, Zack?
Hey, thanks, Johnny.
So we're just gonna start with a little bit on your background, if that's cool. Like, I guess, how did you even get to tinkering with Gno.land? What kind of stuff got you into crypto? And like, if you want to talk about some of your education, that'd be cool.
Yeah, I think I came from a strange angle because I haven't been in crypto at all, and I know very little. Well, I know more now, but when I started, I knew very little. But I've been doing Go since like version 1.3, so like over, what is it now, like 10 years. So I've been doing Go forever, and I've always been interested in like Web3 applications, but there's been a hurdle for me because usually programming in something like like Ethereum or something, you have to learn a new language. So Gno was really interesting to me, is that I wouldn't have to learn a new language, and then I could tinker with these like Web3 ideas and like try to make smart contracts on the system. And so I could leverage my Go knowledge and then learn a little bit for myself, like how I can use crypto. I'm also a Web2 developer, so I develop tons and tons of websites and web applications. And so I've always been curious in how I can integrate Web3 into that. And so this gave me that opportunity. This language kind of lowered my barrier into the crypto world.
Oh, perfect. How did you first get into Go?
Go, I think it was, at that time, it wasn't super popular. It was one of these languages that people were talking about, though. And it was like after it hit 1.0, it was, there's a lot of bumps in the road, hard to use it in the beginning. But once it hit 1.0, I think it was a lot easier to use. And I started playing around with the language. And I liked the language a lot. And so I kept with it through all the little, there's more bumps that they hit during the years, but in all, I really enjoyed it. It's like refreshing coming from Python and C and C++. Like, it's a simple language, and a lot of the stuff is like in the box. Like the formatter is all there, the testing library is all there. They kind of made these decisions at the onset of like how the programming language will work, and then everyone just kind of went with it. Versus like Python, there's like a million ways to do testing. There's a million ways to do packaging. In Go, they have the main way, and that rubs people the wrong way a little bit, but I really liked it. It's just like, I don't care about that stuff. Just give me what you got. Let's go. And so I like Gno's kind of taking that, like they have the tooling of Go and things. So it's like also all built in, batteries included, which is great.
That's awesome. Yeah, I think, I mean, you might be one of the first people that's like really come from like a Web 2 background without like Web3 experience and hop straight into now. So it's like, it's cool that the Tinker
Right.
program sort of had that for you.
Right. Yeah. I think that's not super common. And yeah, for me, it was sort of, I'm also a scientist. And so I was thinking like, what is Web3? And my hypothesis was that it's not useful. And I was trying to prove myself wrong and make something really useful.
That's
Um,
cool.
so that's what I've been kind of gearing towards, like in my tinkering, is like, how can I make this really useful as a web developer?
That's awesome. So my next question is, do you have any background in Cosmos? But it sounds like definitely not.
No, yeah. Just like a cursory knowledge, because I did Bitcoin stuff, whatever, like also 10, 12 years ago.
Cool.
But
So you're straight up a transplant.
yeah, right.
That's cool.
Right.
So I'm sure the audience here is going to actually want to know a little bit more about your work in the Tinker program. What was that like?
Yeah, it was great. I think the Tinker program gave me like the ability to explore the ecosystem. Like, it was useful just for me to go and try to do things, not sure whether it was like up to a certain protocol or a certain standard, but like try to see what Web3 can be for me. And tinkering really allowed me to do that. And it was also useful, like to have kind of an overarching goal for me learning about Web3 and making some web apps I was interested in. And that helped me like propel through bugs that would come up. These bugs will always come up. It's kind of like it's a language that's being built right now. And the bugs I think were really actually useful for me to like see how things work, but then also for the core team to see like, okay, here's where we're going to hit like a little roadblock that we might need to fix. Like certain libraries weren't ported yet, so I ported some. Like stuff like that is like kicking the tires can help you build the car, right?
Yeah, it's actually funny because you were just mentioning that like since you had such a long background with Go, it almost benefited you in this situation because you were able to like understand, there's bugs and there's the weird stuff happening and you're building this thing, like everyone's building this thing, it's going to be awesome, but right now it's like coming to
Right.
fruition still. Like everyone expects Gno.land to be this great thing, but it's like it totally is, but it's totally in development, just like Go. Like
Yeah.
it's getting there. Yeah.
Yeah, you have certain expectations when it's in development, and it's like it's very powerful as is, but like there's little things that you run into from time to time. And I mean, people still run into things with Go. Like Go is a language that is coming out with a new version every 6 months because they find things to fix constantly.
Yeah, it's ever evolving, like there's improvements.
Yeah.
So how
Yeah.
did you even end up here? Like how did you fall into it? Like what motivated you to join the program?
So
And
a
like,
recruiter came to me. A recruiter
okay.
asked if I was interested, and I didn't know much about it, but I do like to code. So I was like, yeah, I can code. I code for fun, so it sounded like a fun program. Like I do a lot of creative coding. That's kind of where I went a little bit with the Gno.land, but thinking about doing creative coding as a tinkerer was great. So I jumped aboard.
That's cool. That's fun. Like, so okay, so what did you find like most fulfilling or I guess challenging also, if you want to talk about that while you were working with Gno.land?
Yeah, I think maybe the challenging part was the VM, because there is a VM, and like understanding the limits of the CPU, because there's natural limits with these like Web3 things that they don't want people spamming and using all the CPU cycles. So there's certain like gas limits basically. So trying to like partition my program into multiple contracts was the way to go. And I think that's what a lot of people do. So at first I was just trying to put everything in one huge contract. And then the VM was like, that's too much gas, like split it up. And so I worked on splitting things up better, and that helped a lot. It actually helps I mean, I would normally do that. I kind of like to write my code in one big file, which is also not the norm. So it's more of a modern approach to like split things into modules. And Gno kind of helps you to do that. But I wasn't kind of aware of that until I got into it. I was like, okay, I need to split things into modules and make my life a lot easier.
Okay, that's an interesting takeaway actually. Yeah.
And the other question was the things that I liked the most.
Yeah, I guess just like what did you find most fulfilling like when you were working on stuff?
Yeah, I thought it was really cool, like using the language. It has like a persistent database in the realms, which I think is really cool. It's just like, it means that you can write code and you don't have to necessarily use an ORM or SQL or a database. Like it's already baked in. So like the global variable, like you can make a map, like kind of a global variable map or this AVL tree, and you can use that to persist data. So it's just like you get that for free. You get a database for free. And when you upload it to the VM, it's kind of like you have a serverless function for free. You now have this function that you can run from your virtual machine in the VM in the smart contract. So it's like software as a service for free as well. And so those are both things that I've spent a lot of time like making. I have Go libraries that are functions as a service, and it's complicated. It uses Docker and all this other stuff. You have to run a server. I have things that are databases like key stores, like in all sorts of ways, like SQL, JSON. and I have to use those libraries and fix those libraries when they go wrong and like adapt them to every program. But here it's nice. It's just like batteries included. It already has these things. It already has this database. It already has like a function as a service from any other realm. And that I think is really, really useful just like as a generic programming like paradigm.
I mean, so I mean, for me, like when you're describing that, it kind of makes me think of like when, like C++ moved to C sharp, and there was a bunch of like memory management, you know, included
Yeah,
in the
right,
actual. It's kind of like that, right?
right.
Like you have all these
Yeah,
services and these functions that would be a total pain in the butt. You got to keep them updated. You got to keep doing this stuff, and
yeah.
then and it's like abstracts that away, so you don't even have to worry about that stuff.
Yeah, I think it's exactly it. But this is at such a high level, like a database, abstracting away a database. Like people don't usually do that in a language. People they have to. They usually want some level of control, like at the database level, at the data exchange level. But like realistically, usually you don't need it. And like I've never really needed it. Like it's taken care of. That's all I want. It's great. It's like built into the language.
That's super cool. I was gonna ask you if you could share a noteworthy insight you had while you were working on the program. That was my next question, but it's funny, like you actually touched right on it.
Yeah, I think that insight for me was to keep things modular. So building smart contracts, especially in this system where realms can like interact with realms, is to make a realm like a small thing that you interact with another realm and kind of divide them up. Because once they're uploaded, they're available to use forever, like they're there. So it's a nice idea to just make like the primordial pieces available, and then you can use them for your application, then other people can also.
That is cool. It's like one of the strengths of Gno.land. It's gonna be really interesting to see like when we have tons of realms, tons of
Yeah,
smart contracts, and people can just like modularly like put pieces together. Like probably like at some point they won't even need to write code. They're just like, oh, this is cool, this is cool. Like
yeah, totally.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's fun. So I guess how do you balance the need for experimentation and tinkering with like the requirements of a structured development process in your work? Like when you're out there and you're tinkering and you want to like you know produce a result, like how do you get there?
Yeah, I think I usually start with the prototype, and I even code some stuff in just Go to make sure that the idea like makes sense. But then, yeah, so usually I do like a tiny program in Go. But the other nice thing about GNO is that porting that code is like it's already ported. It's basically already there. So like I wrote a haiku realm that takes haikus. You upload haikus. So part of it was like writing a haiku parser, and that's just Go code. So I wrote it in Go to test it out, and then it works. So then I just put it into a GNO file, and it's basically GNO code except for like two little changes. So yeah, my advice is always to like take the smallest piece and then build from there, like and make sure it works. And also it's kind of nice from a process standpoint to have tiny pieces that are working that you're like enjoying the value of while you're getting to the full thing. Because if you want to make a sort of complicated project, you never really get to feel the value of it until you get to the end, which may take a long time. So having like little stops along the way is my favorite way.
So okay, that's actually it sort of leads into my next piece right here where I was gonna ask right, so tinkering like leads to unexpected or unconventional solutions, right? Because you're playing around with stuff that like most people don't really, because there's a lot of structure when you're just trying to program, but
Mhm.
you get to like play around with it. Do you have like an example of a project where you were playing with no and it led you to like a weird funny solution?
Yeah, I think, well, a no specific problem I had was that I mentioned earlier, like the gas running out. Like,
Yeah.
and one thing I can do, because I can run the whole ecosystem on my computer, is I can raise, like, delimit it and remove all the gas, like unlimited gas. But like on a real system, I wouldn't necessarily want to do that. So like on the haiku example, I had a dictionary of words, and it's basically a static asset. Like I call it a static asset because a normal web server would just get this file from somewhere. But here I actually wanted to upload the file to the smart contract, and it was too big. It was too many words. And so what I did is, like I mentioned, is I split up the dictionary into multiple realms. And then I made a realm that like coalesces them, which is kind of a strange thing to do. And in the future, maybe they won't have to do something like that. But I mean, the idea is totally fine, is that you take your static asset and split it, and then each one uploads to the server just fine, and then write a realm that can kind of use all of them. But here the asset was a list of words, so it's kind of strange versus like a image or something. But it works. And this may be like one of those things like a hack along the way. Like it may be, static assets may be built in better in the future. But that's one thing that like Web 2 has. I feel like Web 3 should be able to incorporate.
Okay, that's actually so. Okay, so you're saying like, yeah, like currently, you know, in a normal Go library, you have this big document, but with smart contract technology, you needed to like sort of parse it down into small pieces that it was like digestible.
Yeah, because it was too much gas cost to upload
Gotcha.
when it was so big. Yeah.
So okay, so like if we were to flip that on its head, like, did you find any like quirks or any like advantages that you were playing with when you were using the smart contract stuff? Like, did you find any advantages in comparison to traditional development
Oh,
methods?
okay. So like Web 3 versus Web 2. Yeah, I think that there are advantages. So that is the con, maybe, is the gas, and that's like a common con, I think. But the advantages are like the persistent database, also having users, like knowing users immediately, because anyone that interacts with your functions, so the functions of the service is another amazing thing, and then you know who is interacting with them because everyone has a key associated with them. So you automatically also get like user management. And so those are like the biggest things I feel like an API, a public API, a database, and user management, and you get that immediately. So like for me, any trouble with the gas was kind of worth the benefit that you get for these like really basic Web 2 tasks. Like security, it's already secure because you have keys. Like APIs, you already have because you have realms. That stuff is very cool.
Interesting. I mean, so I mean, you're kind of a classically trained Web 2 dev, and
Yeah.
you come in here and you actually feel like, you know, there actually are some advantages. I feel like
Yeah.
this is one of those Twitter posts. It's like extremely controversial. Like, like someone's gonna
Yeah.
roast me for this eventually.
Yeah, I think maybe it will be controversial just because like I can get into it a little more, but like I made this music thing that generates audio from the smart contractors. I thought would be a fun thing to do, and it runs into an issue where it doesn't have enough CPU time to like generate the audio. Like I want to store the audio generated from the smart contract. Maybe not the best way to go about it. Instead of like putting a static asset on it or something, like have it be generative. But the CPU costs can be higher than what I expected it to be able to handle. And of course, I can remove the limits to the CPU. So like locally, I can get around that. But like thinking about how to use that maybe when it becomes mainnet, like how would I do something that's really CPU intensive? And I mean, that's also like a challenge for some Web 2 people. Like you have to have a server that can be fast enough for what you want to do.
Right. Do you want to show us my next question is actually, do you want to show us a demo of your stuff? Like,
Yeah.
wanna
I
show us that?
can show the ByteBeat one. Let's see. I'll share my screen. Oh, I'll share the code first. Maybe that's interesting.
Cool, yeah.
You can see this.
Yeah.
All right. This is kind of cool because so Gno is like split into, there's packages and there's realms, where both of them are just like Go packages, but the packages don't have the state. The realms have the state. So you make little packages that are associated with small components. And so for this realm, which is a ByteBeat realm, which generates audio, I needed a couple of little packages. So I split them into little modules like I was talking about. So I have one here called Riff that's literally just the header for a wave file, like a wave audio file. So it's just a couple of functions, very, very short. And this is all Go code, actually, easy to port. And then this is an actual wave file program. Like this is also basically just Go code. And then another package, the ByteBeat package, which allows you to take a function and write samples. And this is also just Go code, basically. But when these are as packages can then be imported into a realm. And the realm is the smart contract of Gno. So here is the Gno realm. And here basically is each realm here is a different ByteBeat string, which generates different ByteBeat audio. So this realm has this ByteBeat string here. Let's see if I can wrap. And I could change this to like, you can change it to whatever you want. You can have any multiplication, bit shift, exponential. Like if you haven't seen ByteBeats, you should check them out. They're really cool. It's basically a single string like this that generates all sorts of crazy audio.
Okay.
So that's all there is basically in the contract is it generates this ByteBeat and then it persists it forever into this global variable data, which is the other cool feature about Gno is that this is forever containing my ByteBeat audio for as long as the realm exists. And then the other cool thing is I made a comment system that's basically just a few lines of code. So we have a basic comment for, this is Go code, there's a user and a message. And then the database is just this, it's so cool. It's just an array. And this is persistent. So like every time someone adds a comment, it adds something to the array. And like, this is the other cool thing is that you can get the user by using, this is now Gno code, using the standard library of Gno. You can get the caller key. And then you can also use realms to associate a key with someone's actual name or a profile or a blog or whatever. But then in this case, I've added that user to the comments. And now this is the database. Like it's adding stuff to the database. And the other cool thing about Gno is that it all has like a web interface. The web interface is through this function called render. So anytime someone goes to the Gno.land website, which is like an interface to the smart contracts, they're running a read-only version of this function render of a certain path. And in this case, the render is going to be spitting out some audio. So like this is a little HTML audio with base64 encoded ByteBeat. So actual audio data. And it's going to be outputting the comments of all the users. So it's 50 lines of code that has a database of users. It has generated audio stored. It's amazing. It's really cool. And so I've spun this up on my computer with Gno, and I can show you what it actually, like what it currently looks like. This will change to, let's go here.
So I did have one question on that, right? So
yeah,
you're saying it's only 50 lines of code. You basically went from like a library, like instead of having to, access like a database, it literally just sort of does it for you.
right, yeah. Because this is like normally in a database, you would like, someone would add a comment and then you would do like if you were using SQL, you use an insert into a new row of your SQL database. You'd have to open your database, log into your database, make an API call to your database, something extra. And there's libraries for that. And it's not too hard to do in Go, but here it's just like, all you do is add it to an array, which is like the most primitive programming thing.
Four lines of code instead of having to spell out this huge function and all the stuff that you'd have to put in there.
Yeah, I mean, of course, an array is kind of a simple like database, but there's AVL trees in Gno, so it's easy to make like a map or something else, like a more complicated data structure. It's just nice because the data structure, you can be sure that it persists. So it's keeping track of all of your data for you, which is basically what a database does. You don't have to worry about a file or storage. It's just taken care of in a very primitive, like programming sense. Like this, like everyone has an append to an array, every programming language, but in this language, your append to array is being stored across instances, which is cool.
Yeah. So if you had some kind of app that used this information, you don't even need a database because No is already storing that for you.
Yeah, right.
That's cool.
Yeah, I think it's great.
All right, let's check out your No.land ByteBeats.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, this. Oh, this is going to be an infinite loop, I think, for a second. Yeah. Okay. Can you see this?
Yeah.
It says my ByteBeat.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now here's the thing. Will it play audio? So I'm going to play this. Do you hear that?
Unfortunately not.
Okay. Let me see really quick if there's. I may have missed it on the share. Oh, I have to share my whole screen. That's why. Yeah. And then. Okay. Maybe. This is a Linux computer, so I always forget some weird things. Okay, here we go again. Do you hear this?
No.
Here, okay.
Yeah,
some.
I mean, I think it's just too funky, right? Because you're trying to get like audio that's outputting, but we're sort of exchanging through the microphone.
Yes, I'm gonna put my headphones on the microphone and see if you can get it there.
Okay. I mean,
Right,
if
here.
not, we can just share the link to the realm.
Yeah, let's try a crazy experience.
Let's do it. Yeah. There was like just for a moment, there was like 2 seconds of audio that came out.
Okay, so it's not quite there.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, so I can
I
go
mean,
back
so
to it.
okay, so I'll share this in the like the show notes on YouTube.
Yeah,
But since we couldn't hear it, like, can you kind of describe what's happening there?
yeah, totally. Let me go back to the main screen. Sorry for all this shuffling. All right, you see this again, right?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah, we do.
so basically what it's doing is it's rendering what I've had created. So it's rendering an audio loop, and so it's actually storing this byte beat as base64. So if we look at the source, you can see here's all the base64 encoded byte beat. And then I left a comment as my user saying this is cool, but you can see here's my ID. And then there's other realms that you can associate IDs with profiles. And I've done that in another realm I made, the microblog. You can it's like a Twitter kind of thing. And you can associate a name and a profile with your ID, and you can make little blogs with it. And so this website doesn't actually change except for the comments, because this is generated from the realm initiation. But what I encouraged people to do with this realm is to basically fork it. And it's so easy to do. You can actually, if you click source here, you can see the source of the entire realm. So if I click this, this is the realm that I've uploaded to the smart contract system. And people can see this code. It's just Go code. It's not obfuscated. And you can take this code, copy it, and then change it and upload it as a new realm to the mainnet or your testnet or whatever. Like, this is kind of what I loved about Web 2, is that you can go to any website and look at the HTML and use the HTML to kind of build another website or learn something from or design something from. It's open source. And so essentially every realm also here is open source. So there's a couple of realms already here. Like, this is the test board. If we go to the source, you can see there's all the source of this realm too. They're all here. So they're all like ready to be used by other people, which is, I think, one of the best things about Web 2 is that it's not closed source. It's allowing people to be open and make things and they mostly have to make things in the open. Of course, there's people that obfuscate their code, which is annoying. But
you said Web 2, you meant Web 3, right?
no, I mean, yeah, people can do it in the web too. Like any website has a source associated with it. Like, but in some cases, people will obfuscate it and they don't make it easy to figure out what's happening. Whereas in Web3, in Gno specifically, they designed it so the code is available and code, like you can import that code. You don't have to just copy it. But if you want to see it, you can see it. It's just there.
Yeah. That's cool. Oh, man, that's pretty cool, man. And you said you were working on some other like realms and smart contract stuff that you were tinkering with.
Yeah, so part of the ByteBeat one is right now the realm generates the audio, but I wanted to make a realm where you can ask it to generate different audio. So you can supply it with a string, and then that string will be parsed, and then it generates audio from the parsed string. This one is slightly complicated because it means that it needs to have a virtual machine that does the parsing, like it parses the math basically. It's like a calculator. So I wrote another realm that is a calculator basically. You can type in equations and it will run them. So it converts your string of whatever plus, minus, bit shift, exponential, and then converts it to a math equation and computes it.
It kind of sounds like as part of the Tinker program, you were sort of just trying to break it.
Yeah, totally. I did break it a lot.
That's funny.
Yeah,
So,
totally.
okay, so this actually like sort of goes into the next one. Like, in your opinion, right, Zach? Like, how do you think the Tinker program? Like, I think we're gonna keep it going. We're gonna get some more people. You know, hopefully you come back. Your contract ended, but like, we'd love to have you back. How do you think this kind of stuff affects the foundational work of building Gno.land?
I think it's like crucial. I mean, personally speaking, I think that you have to play with something that you're building, or you have to understand why you're building it and who's it's for. Like, you can of course build something for like somebody, but if that somebody is not you, it's hard to say what that somebody wants and needs. And sometimes those are completely different things. Like, I don't know, for example, like the Go language itself, people wanted so many different things. They wanted generics, they wanted like different error handling, but like when you actually use the language, like it's like for me, it's been fine. Like I don't need those things and I use it all the time. And I build other things like in my free time. And I always find that if I'm not using the thing that I'm building, like then I don't know what use it has. It's hard to tell. And so having people use Gno while it's being built tells them like where it's falling short, where it's really powerful. You can kind of lean into things that are powerful. You can fix things that fall short, but then you kind of make sure that people have the runway they need to build something and fly with it.
Yeah.
Because otherwise you may be optimizing something that maybe people will never touch. And like, it's a part of the language, yeah, but like, how useful is it? So basically, you can have really impactful usefulness when you're playing with something while you're making it.
Yeah. What kind of I guess, you know, we'll probably have a new cohort of Tinkers pretty soon. What kind of stuff would you like to see them working on?
I would like to see more realms for sure, and maybe like more modular realms that can be imported well. Like I guess like one little hiccup also is like I tried to import some realm, but they weren't exported because in Go you have to capitalize the API if you want it to be exported, and they capitalize some things but not all the things. So I would have to fork it, but it's none of that's a huge issue, but something to keep in mind. Like as people make realms, people should make them with the intention that other people will use them. So to be very like liberal when they're exporting functions is one thing. And I think that's like the real power behind Gno eventually in Web3 is that having all these realms available to use, and like you said, plug and play what you need to generate something. And that will only happen if people are kind of really taking care to modularize as we go now, building all these realms.
Yeah, that's interesting. So it's like like kind of like the best way forward is to sort of build like little pieces
Yeah,
and make sure that functions perfectly, and then so that people can build like bigger, you know, tools or functionality in general using
exactly.
tiny little pieces.
Yeah, exactly.
Um, cool. Getting close here to the end of my questions, but hopefully, are you still cool to
Yeah,
keep
yeah,
going?
yeah, sure.
Awesome, man. I actually wanted to ask you, like, what did you enjoy the most about contributing to No? Like, was there any particular aspects of like Noah's mission or the values that resonate with you personally? Or did you just kind of just like geek out on the code, or is it a little bit of both?
I think the openness, open source is close to my heart, so that was really nice to see. And I felt like so all this interaction, a lot of interaction happens through GitHub and like issues and pull requests.
Yeah.
And I maintain like hundreds of repositories, and I deal with lots of issues and lots of pull requests. And it's usually not enjoyable, I would say. So, like, but with it was enjoyable. Like everyone is very cordial and nice, and like giving good criticism, and then like constructive criticism and being happy about things. Like it was much nicer to make pull requests to Gno than it has been in my experience. Like people are not overtly like, oh, you did this wrong. Like, why'd you do it this way? They're like, this is the interesting way. Here's another way to do it. Like, there's like multiple ways of saying the same thing, and there's a mean way and a nice way, and I prefer the nicer way. And I feel like that's how it has.
Yeah. Dude, that's great to hear actually. Like I you know, I'm not developing, so I don't actually contribute that much to the GitHub other than like documentation and things like that. So it's like actually really cool to hear that it's like the environment is sort of collaborative and not really like a walled garden.
Yeah, yeah, and it's not at least it wasn't a very like I don't know how to say it, like a toxic environment. Some repositories you make pull requests and you like you don't want to get I don't want to make pull requests actually sometimes. So like
Yeah.
I don't want to deal with this person. Like
Yeah, you like learned your lesson. You're like, why did I do this?
yeah, yeah,
Man, I mean, that's sad for them actually. Like, what, you know, like when you have somebody that's trying to contribute and they're asking themselves, like, why did I even contribute?
right,
That's a
right,
bummer.
right.
Um, so okay, so like you're kind of experienced here now, right? Like you played around with the repo, no, you've made some realms. For new people that are interested in joining Gno.land, or I guess even the Tinker program, like what kind of steps or qualifications would you recommend? Um,
Yeah, I think I would really recommend like a baseline knowledge of Go. Like baseline can be like, I mean, just a really strong interest in Go, really. Like if you're interested in Go or you're programming in Go, I would try Gno. Because yeah, it's if you already know Go, you basically know Gno, which is the cool thing. And I would also like if you're interested in Web3, I think it's not that I've tried every platform out there, but I think it's a really good platform. It has a very low barrier to getting into, which is nice because sometimes there's some languages that have really complicated tool chains and I start using them and I'm just like, I learned all this tool chain stuff and I don't want to use the language anymore. Like I bounce off it or whatever reason. But
yeah,
if you bounce off this, like you don't really have to learn the language so much because if you know some Go, you already know it. So I would say, yeah, start with Go first if you don't know Go. And Go is really accessible now. There's a lot of great tutorials. The language is pretty simple. And the thing I like about the language is that if it's hard to read, then it's probably not written well. like the language itself should be pretty, like you can of course write really terse code, but it tries to have people like Python does. It tries to have people write code that's like readable. And in the beginning, especially, that was really the case. That people were writing code and making it really readable, and it was a really important foundation for writing code. Now it's a little more complicated. Like there's generics now, which makes things harder to read and stuff. But Gno is like pre-generics. So if that's helpful.
yeah. So I mean, like you were saying, you've been in Go. How long did you say? A decade?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. How old is Go?
I think it started in 2000. Oh, I don't want to misspeak now. 2009 is my guess, but I bet it started earlier than that actually,
Okay.
because it was under a few iterations. I'm just
So I
gonna look
mean,
it
it's
up quick so I don't.
pretty strong adopted language, tons of documentation, and now it's like accessible to Web3.
Yeah, 2009 and next week.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah, so
Happy
13
birthday, Go.
years. Yeah. November 10th is the birthday.
Okay. That's interesting. I should maybe make a post for that.
Yeah.
Like, thank you, Go. um, cool. So we talked a bit about how you got recruited into the Tinker program. But if people wanted to participate in the Tinker program, how would they reach out to that, you think?
There is a repo for submitting proposals, like ideas. I maybe you can link to it. I'm not sure the link right now.
Yeah, we can find it. We'll throw it in the show
Um,
notes.
but also just make pull requests to the Gno language. Uh, Everyone sees them, and then that immediately clocks you as an interested person. And then from there, just say like, I'm interested in doing more. Like, how do I do this? And people will find you. Like the core developers, like when
Like
someone new comes in the pull request, we're all
they're
very
like
excited.
everyone's like stoked. Yeah.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
guys heard it from Zach. Like literally just contribute and people will be stoked to see your stuff.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. It's a
Yeah.
really nice environment. Yeah,
And it's a cool space, right? Like everything's so new and
yeah,
like
yeah,
you're literally here at foundational level and I don't know, it's
yeah.
exciting, I think.
I think it's a perfect level to start because there's now tutorials. There's a good number of tutorials to getting started, and in like a year ago, maybe there was one or very few.
Yeah.
Uh, but they've grown, and they're really useful to get started now. So the barrier is much lower than it has been.
Cool. Awesome, Zach. Thanks so much for everything, man. It was awesome seeing like your work and it's cool like actually like we've had a couple conversations before, but I didn't realize that you were like almost strictly a Web2 dev and you
Yeah,
just decided to like come and experiment really with us.
exactly. I wanted to experiment and see whether Web3 was better somehow, or like what's better about whatever Web2 versus
Yeah,
Web3.
what's different? Like how can I challenge myself kind of stuff. Do you
Exactly.
have like closing words? Like is there anything that you're personally looking forward to the most with Gno.land?
Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing how it develops. Like I want to write more realms. Like I think it'll be nice when there's a main net, then I can kind of like move away from servers. That would be like the big thing. Like
Yeah.
if I can upload, I do tons of like Web2 like functions that just run on a cloud. But moving away, like my cloud runs like 100 different websites right now. It's kind of crazy. Like to just have them run as realms would be so cool.
Awesome, man. Cool.
Yeah.
Well, I guess that wraps it up. Thanks so much for your time, and hopefully we'll get you back.
Yeah, hopefully.
Yeah.
All right. Great talking to you, Johnny.
Cool, Zach. Thanks so much, man.
Yep. All right. See ya.
Ciao.